Yo, howdy, howdy. Howdy, howdy, everybody. I promised I would get in here and this would be a new thing. Gotta turn the music down first. That's too loud. Where's that? Is that okay? That's probably all right. Talk over the music here at the beginning. I promised you guys that I would answer the first 3 questions in the chat room at the beginning of the show. This is like a little promo to try to get you guys in here quicker, right at the front end of the pod. So not everybody showing up 25 minutes in and wondering what the hell they missed. First questions are from Jack. 9-Cat Roto Games Cap stashing Isaiah Jackson or Mark Williams or Kelly Olynyk. Also, should I trade away Jordan Clarkson for Jonathan Isaac? Okay, so my thoughts on Jordan Clarkson have gotten me into warm water with the fantasy community at large. He's number 147 in 9-Cat on a per-game basis. He's been incredibly durable, playing in all 50 games for Utah so far, and averaging 21, 4, and 4, and a good free throw percent. The problem with Clarkson this year is that beyond points and threes and free throw percent, and I guess sort of assists, the negatives have been as big as or slightly larger than the positives. It's sort of a weird thing to try to reconcile in your mind because he actually is good at scoring and free throws and 3-pointers in particular, and then assists are fine for a ball-dominant guard, but not very good. 4.5 is kind of meh for a guy has his usage rate on the year. But he's a really interesting case study in what happens if you're like kind of good in 4 and kind of bad in 5, because the rebounds are not very good for someone who's playing 33 minutes a ball game. The field goal percent is not awful by itself, but on 17 shots a game, it's pretty bad. His defensive stats are both terrible, and turnovers are kind of high. So Jordan Clarkson is on the roto side, kind of a tough guy to roster for head-to-head. Like, let's say you're punting 1 or 2 of the categories he's of the 5 he's not very good, then yeah. I hate this argument that I get in with folks on Twitter because they're like, well, what if I'm doing this format? It's like, okay, fine, but I can't describe every scenario to you guys. I have to describe these players in a vacuum. And in a vacuum, Jordan Clarkson is someone that you should trade away for somebody who's, well, Jonathan Isaac isn't inside the top 100, but I got to feel like in about 2, maybe more like 3 weeks, he will be. Because on the roto side, he's going to be a positive, a net positive in more categories, and he's a negative. If you're in a head-to-head league and you're punting turnovers and field goal percent, then yeah, Jordan Clarkson's inside the top 100. But guess what? You guys can't yell at me about that because I can't say that about every player in the NBA. Every player in the NBA, there's like 200 players where if you're punting the right things, they make sense. I got to leave that up to you guys. In terms of stashing, well, the only one of those guys that we know will have value when they come back is Kelly Olynyk, but we don't know when that's going to be. I would lean towards Isaiah Jackson among those names because the Pacers slipping a little bit with no Tyrese Halliburton. Although if he comes back, then maybe that does spin on its head. If they can't get this extension worked out with Miles Turner really soon, they may not have a choice but to move him. And so then you got that. Charlotte, I have no idea what they're doing because Mason Plumlee just keeps playing and playing and playing and playing and playing. And even if he leaves, there's no guarantee that Mark Williams gets more than 22 minutes a ball game because they're trading off with Nick Richards. That was question number 1. Brandon Clarke or Drew Eubanks? I'm going to go Clarke on this one because we don't know how long Nurk is out yet. It's calf, so it's not going to be super fast. My guess is, at least a game. Could be a week. We know Steven Adams is out for about a month. And Brandon Clarke and Xavier Tillman, they're going to be pushing each other a little bit there. But Clark's going to be the guy more often than not. So I'll go Brandon Clarke on this one. Thoughts on stashing Isaiah Jackson due to the Miles Turner injury? So the injury is actually less of what I'm focused on with Turner. It was a very, very mild ankle tweak. He's listed as questionable on sites that sort of got the injury update in time. But he played until the very end of the ball game. He just sort of came off the floor with a little bit of a limp. Maybe it tightens up a little bit. Maybe we get a game out of Jackson. I don't think it'll be more than 1. 2 feels like the absolute max. The upside there, of course, is does Miles get traded while he's nursing his sore ankle? And then obviously it kind of turns into something else. So Migo says, I'm the fourth question because it took me too long to write. So guess what? I'm going to do yours too. We'll do 4 questions here at the beginning. And honestly, if questions come in fast and furious at the front end the way that they are right now, then maybe I'll just do a bunch at the beginning. But I like this. It's pushing everybody to get into the show with me. And so far, so good on that front. I'm thinking of stashing Kelly Olynyk and Josh Hart in my injured list slots for the playoffs. I'm planning to drop Quentin Grimes and Zach Collins just in case Pirtle gets shipped. This is a sound strategy in a punt, field goal, and block team. Well, I don't know what I didn't get the initial report on Hart other than hammy, and hammies usually take a week or 2. I like Josh Hart as just a player in general. Doesn't necessarily have to be a stash. So, I mean, if you have those IL slots open, then I'm totally fine with it because those 2 guys coming back will be relatively good. If you have to take zeros for either of them, I would say no. So that's where we're going to leave this off, by the way. Anybody else who got a question in, I apologize. I'll get to yours at the end of the show. Still going to get answered. Don't worry. But this was the promo. Tomorrow you guys will pop those questions. Actually, tomorrow is going to be extra special show. Tomorrow, I'll be with Brewski here on the pod. I think it's going to be around the same time. I got to get with him on when that show is actually going to air, but it's going to be live here on the YouTubes. Let me take that down out of the way so you guys can see my face again. Tomorrow's show is going to be here on YouTube. Me and Aaron Brewski. It's back to Fun Shirt Fridays. I'm not sure if you guys remember those from a few years back. But that should be a lot of fun. We'll go over the biggest stories of the week. I try to come up with the things that are really kind of the pressing topics that everybody wants to hear about. And Brew and I will go through that, and then we'll try to lightning round some questions towards the end of that show as well. We'll see how long it goes. I'm pretty sure I have a nanny tomorrow doing my younger kids pickup at like 11 something, which I don't today. So I got to start to haul ass a little bit here. But that means that Brew and I can probably kind of meander through tomorrow's show, which I know a lot of people really do enjoy. Now, as far as today goes, that's your welcome. I'm going to step aside. I'm going to turn the music off. I'm going to get my recording software booted up, and then we'll do the show that everybody will hear over on the traditional podcast channels as well. And we'll do the rest of the live questions at the end of the show. So don't worry if you posted your question here. I know there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish questions that are in there that I didn't get to yet. They'll come at the end of the pod. Don't worry. Don't leave, YouTube viewers. When I say goodbye to the recorded listeners, I come back to YouTube and we chit chat at that point. There's 30 some odd of you watching right now. There's 16 likes on the show. I need to see that get up and over 20 while I'm getting my recording software booted up. So please do go like the pod. And if anybody's joining for the first time, please subscribe to our YouTube page. Legitimately, I don't know how easy that is to do. I think it's relatively simple, but I'm not super positive. It seems like it's pretty easy to just click and subscribe to our YouTube page. And again, keep getting those questions over in the chat room, whichever direction it is on your mobile, whatever device. And folks watching on YouTube, if you didn't come from over on Twitter, that's the handle there. It's also in the show description. I am way too busy on social media, so please do come hang out with us over there. I spend far too many hours on social. So I'm going to turn my mic off here for a second. I'm going to get the music rolling. I'll let it roll here for a minute, but then I'm going to turn the music off. And when you hear that, that's when you'll know it's about a 5-second countdown to the start of the recorded pod. So sit tight. I'll be right back. Not one, but two more star players are back in the mix as of Wednesday evening. 'Tis the week, friends. We got Chris Paul, not as long of an injury, so maybe that one's a hard one to put in the same bucket, but we got Chris Paul back on Sunday. We got Chris Middleton back on Monday. We got Jonathan Isaac, if you want to count him in there, back on Monday. And last night, maybe the biggest ones of all, Brandon Ingram and Anthony Davis are back, baby. And as I said on yesterday's show, I was going to start Anthony Davis in a games cap format. I was going to start all of them in head-to-head, and I wasn't going to start Brandon Ingram over on the games cap side. It just felt like there was going to be too much rust, and his fantasy game really does require him get up in like 28 to 30 plus minutes to hit that top 50, top 60 valuation level where he gets to, and that actually worked out pretty well as far as yesterday goes. But overall, I got butterflies in my tummy, friends. I got butterflies in my tummy. The stars are coming back. Now we just need to keep everybody else upright until they do. I don't know if we can pull this off. Other injury news over the last day. Some of it I want to get to as we work our way through the recaps, as we work our way through the box scores from last night. Like the Portland game in particular had a couple of interesting injuries. We got some data points on the lack of Steven Adams for the Memphis Grizzlies. But yesterday in the afternoon, not something we've talked about on this podcast yet, is that Devin Booker got a relatively positive update as well. He is set to be reevaluated in 1 week, which you never want to hear the term reevaluated because they could still be like, oh, well, we looked at him and things were still crap. But the reevaluation periods getting shorter is still a positive development. So to that end, I think it feels like the Suns are hopeful that they'll have Booker back in not too long after that week. He's one of the last remaining super big name players that remains on the shelf right now. I know Karl Anthony Towns is like no sign of coming back. Halliburton, we got a good report. He's hoping to be back maybe as early as this weekend. Kevin Durant, we got that pretty good report earlier this week that he's hoping to be back within 2 weeks. Donovan Mitchell is maybe out. Porzingis, there was a good report on him. They're hoping to have him back in less than 2 weeks. We're finally getting what almost feels like an avalanche of good news about star-level players. I almost don't know what to do with myself. I mean, I do kind of know what to do with myself, and it's hold my breath that everybody else turns out to be okay. But anyway, welcome to the show, everyone. It's Fantasy NBA Today. It's a Sports Ethos presentation. I am Dan Bespers. Still, same old guy. Iron Man streak lives on. At some point, I don't know what the Iron Man streak is at now. We're at something like 2 or 3 consecutive years of Monday through Friday without a single day off, in season, off season, whatever. It's taken on a life of its own, and what I need to do is just take a day and either get a fill-in host or just frankly don't release a show on some one day, maybe during the off season. And then at least then the streak will be so short coming back that it'll be like, okay, well, I just took one off, so I could probably do another one. Slippery slope argument, I guess. But at some point, I'll take a day off. Mark my words. At some point, I'll take a day off. But not yet. Find me over on social at Dan Bespers, DanBesbris. As I've said 1,000 times, you need to be on Twitter to be successful at Fantasy NBA. Unless you're in the wimpiest of wimpy leagues, you got to be on Twitter where all of this news is breaking, moments notice type stuff. And I hope you guys will follow me when you head over there, because recruiting pitch at the front end of today's show. I haven't done that in a little while, actually. If you think you can hang, if you think you're a fantasy analyst, either full season fantasy or DFS for baseball, football, basketball, or hockey, hit me up on Twitter at Dan Bespers. You can even post something in the YouTube live chat during one of these shows. You can email roster@sportsethos.com. There's a lot of ways to get in touch if you think you can be a fantasy analyst for any of the 4 major sports, or if you got something else up your sleeve, I'm happy to listen to it as well. But let's start talking about some of the fantasy stuff here. That's what you guys came to see. We'll begin with the early one. It was a relatively large Wednesday, 10-game card, I think. Was it 9? No, it was 10 games last night. You guys watching me count up games as I go through a podcast. Orlando, Indiana, 126-120. The Pacers, again, without Tyrese Halliburton, they're just not that good. Really goes to show how much he does for that team. Fantasy stuff, on Indy, we saw Chris Duarte scored 16 points. He had 6 steals in this ball game as well. But they're down a couple of players at this point. There was no Andrew Nembhard for this one. Aaron Nesmith was awful, so he got yanked early. So other guys kind of picked up a few of those minutes. So no Nembhard, no Halliburton. They've redone the backcourt. McConnell, Duarte, those guys will end up on the bench when all of this stuff is done. You're rolling with McConnell for sure, as long as Halliburton's out. And then Miles Turner, as we mentioned, did exit this ball game. Actually, I think I mentioned that over on one of the live recordings. Is Miles left just a little bit early. I think he kind of like limped off the court at the final horn. So it even wasn't truly early with a slightly tweaked ankle. It looked extremely minor, but it does kind of give you this opportunity. If you wanted to pick up Isaiah Jackson, who had 6 points, a steal, and 3 blocks in only 12 and a half minutes. I mean, we got to free Isaiah Jackson at some point this year, don't we? One would hope. But the problem, of course, is that they're not as good with Jackson out there as they are with Miles Turner. And as long as the Pacers haven't fully embraced losing, which they haven't yet, this is going to be murky. And when I say murky, I mean with Jackson, okay, maybe you pick him up here while Miles Turner has this ankle thing. And maybe Miles misses a game. And it buys us just a couple of days to get closer to the trade deadline. If you're thinking about a Jackson stash all the way up to the deadline, I just think it's going to get extremely frustrating because he's going to go back to playing 11, 12 minutes a game, even if you get one good one out of him. Jonathan Isaac, he looks really good in his per-minute production right now. He only played 8 minutes again. I thought maybe we'd see that minutes cap go up from 10 to 11. I still think that overall he's going to increase by about 1 minute per ball game. And it's not that surprising to me, kind of thinking through it a second time, that his minutes went down from game 1 to game 2. Because game 1, it was, okay, get your wind back, make sure you're okay. Game 2, let's just get a brisk jog going and make sure everything holds. All the pieces are still clipped together. And if they are, then on game 3, maybe we click you back up. So maybe he goes for 11 or 12 minutes in his third game back. It's going to be the world's slowest ramp up, which we've said 1,000 times. We're probably 3 weeks away, so all-star break, really, from Isaac playing enough minutes to be fantasy relevant, would be my guess. So Roto Games Cap only is still the move there. Gary Harris had a huge ball game, but I don't care. He went 8 for 9 from the floor, and that'll never happen again. Well, maybe it'll happen again at some point, but I doubt it's this year. Philly beat Brooklyn 137-133. Hell of a ball game. The Nets shot 65% and lost, mostly because they had 16 turnovers to Philly's 9. Just a possession gap that they kind of couldn't make up there. Philly shot the ball well, too. I mean, crap, 270 combined points. You figure everybody's shooting the ball well. And pretty much everybody did, with, interestingly, the exception of Joel Embiid. He was like the only guy on the court that didn't have a good shooting night. Still a perfectly fine fantasy line. The big fantasy stuff in this one, Seth Curry had a big ball game, but we've talked about it before. They're just rotating through who does well, filling in for Kevin Durant, and they're all schedule stream level guys. Royce O'Neal, TJ Warren, Seth Curry, Yuta Watanabe, Joe Harris, all of these guys. Schedule streams, no more than that. I thought the biggest news from this game was that DeAnthony Melton played 34 minutes. And the player whose minutes actually suffered was PJ Tucker. Is there a guarantee that Melton plays starters level minutes every ball game? No. He saw more because he was playing better in this one. But that's now 3 games in a row where Melton, and in one of those games the Sixers were sitting all of their starters, so you can kind of semi throw that one out. But 3 games in a row, he's played 30 minutes or more. He's beginning to settle into this new role, which is exactly what we talked about. It takes Melton about 10 days or somewhere between 4 and 6 ball games to figure out his role shifts. That's his cross to bear. The other guys, wherever they play, their role is the same. Tyrese Maxey, you shoot. Harden, you run the pick and roll. Embiid, you do all of your Embiid stuff. Tobias Harris, you play off these guys. You're the next dude who gets shots. Melton's the one dude where it's like, all right, D'Anthony, now you're playing with these guys. He's like, okay, well, let me see how I can play off of these players. How can I react to them? He's not the proact guy on that team, except when everybody was hurt. So he had a really good shooting game. Yeah, that's not going to happen every night. But you're seeing the steals, the blocks. He has 5 blocks and 6 steals his last 3 ball games. He has 14 rebounds. He has 8 assists over those games. He has 6 3-pointers. He's settling in. And this is why we said don't drop after 3 bad ball games with him. It takes him longer than that to figure out where he belongs in a new unit. Washington over Houston, 108-103. A few interesting things in this ball game. First, DeLon Wright got a start with Monte Morris sitting it out, and Wright was honestly a little bit disappointing based on how good he had been. And this is partly because when you move into the starting unit, you have to get other guys involved. You get Bradley Beal involved. You get Kyle Kuzma going. You don't have the freedom to just go do stuff. That kind of what he was doing while coming off the bench. Still, we got 4 assists. We got 3 steals and a 3-pointer. I'm not super complaining about it, but I thought we'd get a little bit more. Daniel Gafford looked great. Starters level minutes, 33 minutes for Gafford. The only 2 categories, 3 really, that I'm looking at are rebounds, blocks, and field goal percent, and all 3 of those were a positive, especially blocks with 4. I love Daniel Gafford right now with Porzingis out. Denny Avdia is another name we wanted to talk about. It sounds like the Wizards are trying to shoehorn more minutes to Avdia, and the Rui Hachimura trade kind of helped open those up. As I've said for 3 shows in a row, the thing that worries me with Avdia is not the minutes. It's not even the opportunity right now. It's that there are a bunch of ball handlers in his way. He's not a high usage guy. He's never going to force himself into the mix. But I did like that he took 13 shots yesterday. The fact that he had the 3rd highest shot total on the team was nice. No Morris is something to keep in the back of your head. Still no Porzingis is something to keep in the back of your head. And so I don't think he stays above the cut line as really almost either of those guys come back. But, you know, he'll give you some rebounds. He'll give you some steals. He'll give you some blocks. There's just these, I just need the tiniest bit more. And maybe it's that there just isn't a whole lot of room for upside with him as long as this number of players is still healthy. Every time someone else goes down, Avdia's upside gets a little bit higher. And it's why I like Gafford in the head-to-head, which guy should I pick up and play? Because there is that explosion ability with Gafford, where he could go 7 of 8 from the floor with 10 rebounds and 3 or 4 blocks. That can happen. You're not going to see that happen with Avdia. He could have shot the ball better yesterday, and he got 10 rebounds. He's had good rebounding numbers a couple games in a row, but you're very rarely going to get more than 13 or 14 points or, you know, a steal or a 3-pointer. That's kind of, you've got this safe floor with him, but it's a narrow band. For Roto, I feel much more comfortable starting Gafford. I wouldn't be that upset if you started all 3 of the names we've talked about in Wright, Gafford, and Avdia. But personally, I'm only starting Wright and Gafford. And Avdia is extremely close. Extremely close. So it's not that big of a deal if you went for it. Like, this is the kind of game maybe we should have because the Rockets are terrible. And you figure that's a game where maybe you can squeeze out some fantasy stuff. Kendrick Nunn was also interesting. I didn't think he would play 20 minutes at all this year, and he got 22 in his first game. It helped that he was shooting the ball well. Overall, he actually had maybe his best game of the season. Sometimes for guys, they just got to get out from under LeBron, which I'm not going to take anything away from Bron. He's been incredible, but there's a pressure element to it, and some guys just kind of wilt in that spot. They just don't respond to the expectation. There aren't many expectations for him now in Washington, so it's a little bit of a fresh start for Kendrick. I'm not picking him up. There's a Yiddish term that rhymes with Kendrick. The word is Schmendrick. And to me, Kendrick on the fantasy side is a little bit of a Schmendrick. For Houston, Alperen Şengün was a beast again, triple-doubled. He is steamrolling right now. He had that rough free throw shooting game. He's at number 65 overall on the season. So he's actually kind of pushed his way up right around his ADP. Number 55 over the last month, being largely held back by his foul shooting more than anything else. So if you kind of catch him on the right couple of weeks, top 20 over the last 2 weeks, despite horrible foul shooting, because he's shooting 68% from the field with 3.2 defensive stats. For Şengün, if you can move him for a top 40 player, that's the target range right now, you do it. Anything less than that, I don't think you do, because I feel like he can probably roll top 50 the rest of the way. I don't know that, like, the field goal percent is probably not going to hold this high. The assists are almost definitely not going to be 10 per ball game. And more than anything, the defensive stats are not going to be 5 most days. But he looks really good right now, putting up the big numbers. And let's capitalize on that. Jabari Smith Jr. came back. He was awful. That pushed Tari Eason to the bench. So then he also kind of became awful. Ugh, Houston. KJ Martin had 16 and 13. I guess that's something. But Kevin Porter Jr. was still out, and he's going to come back. And this whole thing's going to get readjusted. I know Eric Gordon, I'm sure, is just like lighting candles at an altar that he finally gets traded. I think he does, and I also don't know that it really matters for what's left with the Rockets. Milwaukee beat Denver 107-99. Denver sat everybody, so you can just kind of dump that box score. We figured that Zeke Naji and Bruce Brown would be your fill-in guys, and they kind of were, but the other side of this was this game was going to be so hard for them. Can anyone really have fantasy value for the Nuggets? And the answer was, yeah, Aaron Gordon did, and Bruce Brown did, and Zeke Naji was meh. Pat Connaughton had a big ball game, but I sort of don't care. I do care because he's on my 30-deep team, which badly needs giant games from everybody because my key guys are all hurt. Porzingis, Kevin Durant, Kelly Oubre Jr., those guys are all down. I think those are I know those are at least my top 2 picks. You can't win a 30-team league when you lose your top 2 picks. That's impossible. Chris Middleton, 15 minutes, looked way less rusty in this game than he did in his first one, but it helps to pick on a Denver B squad, which is kind of what happened here. Brook Lopez, very cold from the field, but still got his 4 blocks and nothing else really to take away from the Bucks as we wait on Middleton to get himself ramped up, and then we could drop him into a roto lineup. Atlanta, much needed road win. This was a hard fought one. They needed to put up big time points, and they did it. Thanks to Bogdan Bogdanovic. We've been talking about how he's going to get hot at some point. He's a very streaky shooter. How many streaky shooters have we talked about on this show lately? Kyle Lowry, Freddie VanVleet. Bogdan is another one. When he gets cooking, this could be a run of a few weeks where he's just lighting it on fire. I don't know for sure that that's going to be the case. But it sure feels like it has the possibility to. I'd say there's like a 30% chance that this is the front end of a Bogdan fire stretch. And that's why we were saying, see if you can get him for like a top 100 guy or pick him up off the waiver wire, because you're going to catch one of these heaters and he's going to elevate you. And then you just have to make sure that, Terrence Rossian in seasons past, you jump off when things get ugly. No DeAndre Hunter. He's still dealing with that asthma attack. So we wish him the best. For OKC, Shea and Jalen Williams, those are the only guys that I'm dropping into a roto lineup. Josh Giddey is the other play in certain formats. Nothing changes there. Let's keep trucking. Actually, before I keep trucking, I forgot to do this yesterday. I want to pivot back over to the YouTube live chat and remind everybody that you can throw questions in the chat room. A few of you guys have been doing so. Actually, there's a lot of conversation happening in the chat room right now. That's cool. I love it. I love that the chat room is starting to pick up an intensity on a day-to-day basis. That's actually really fun for me. That makes me feel like this is starting to kind of catch on a little. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I adore seeing the activity. I adore seeing that you guys are happy with the way this is going and so on and so forth. I love looking back at the YouTube window and the chat room and seeing that there are more people watching now than there were 10 minutes ago. So let's just keep rumbling, everybody. And if you're one of the 40 some odd people that's enjoying right now, please click thumbs up. You guys know what I'm about to ask. There are a bunch of you that are here watching that haven't hit that thumbs up button yet. And I'm guessing at least 1 or 2 of you watching that hasn't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet. So throw something in the chat room. I'm going to answer all of those questions at the end of the show. I'm going to go real fast today because I got to pick up my kid at preschool on time. And like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Let's get up to 30 likes. Come on. I can see 2 of you did it. Come on. Come on. Yeah, I'm waving you in. I'm doing the Dave Chappelle wave. Come on. Get in there. Get that like in. All right, well, I'm on a time thing here, so let's let's get back into the goodies. And a reminder, of course, once again, do follow on Twitter at Dan Besbris. I'd love to hear from you guys if you're interested in joining up with us at Sports Ethos. I know I wanted to try to mention that 2 or 3 times during today's podcast. Minnesota beat New Orleans on the road. This had a full letdown for the Pelicans written on it because they got Brandon Ingram back. They need him to be more than he was, and they will be. He's going to make that team a whole hell of a lot better. For the Pelicans, though, Ingram's return did kind of what we thought it would, which is it pushed all the fringy streamer guys off the board. Trey Murphy was not good. Herb Jones was not good. Najee Marshall was not good. CJ McCollum, still good. Jonas Valanciunas, interestingly, still good. Larry Nance was someone I said I've been worried about. There's not a consistency there right now. JV was a guy I benched. I actually don't have him anywhere. He's a guy that I hypothetically benched going into this game, so I don't want to try to take credit for his decent ball game. I do think that he trends down here with Ingram back as well. And for the foreseeable future, but we can reassess on a nightly basis, I'm only starting McCollum, and I'll probably start Ingram in their next ball game. I think they have a back-to-back over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, if I'm remembering right. He'll probably play about 28 minutes in one of those 2 games, and he'll probably skip the other one. But I'll probably play him in the game where he plays. My guess is around 28 minutes. Minnesota, as slow-mo goeth, so goeth the Timberwolves. Kyle Anderson, 10-3-7, 2 steals, 2 blocks, good field goal, good free throw, a plus 16 in a game they won by 9. Such as it always is for Kyle Anderson. He is the glue guy for that team right now. And you're playing him as long as Cat is out. We were way higher on slow-mo on this show than a lot of folks were. There was a doubt. Folks are not doubting him anymore. Sometimes I run late on dudes. Sometimes we run early. We ran early on slow-mo, and I think we're running early on Brandon Clarke, although we'll talk about him in a minute. Portland is a very interesting team. So I'm going to talk about them second. Hardy har har. Utah, pretty much nothing. Nothing changed here for me. I still like what Mike Conley's doing lately. Larry Markkinen slowed down a little bit here. He's having a dream season, so I kind of don't care. Colin Sexton had a better game. So did Jared Vanderbilt, but you can't trust those guys in Roto. Those are guys. Malik Beasley's on the list as well. Sexton, Vanderbilt, Beasley. Those guys are all dudes that I would start when Utah has a back-to-back, basically. Get him in their head-to-head lineups. And when Walker Kessler's kind of coming back to earth a little bit. Teams are figuring out what his weaknesses are. Dame, in particular, is not a dude you want to play against if he's warm and you're a big, slow-moving center. And so that's why Utah had to go a little bit smaller in this game because Dame was going crazy. It also, believe it or not, helped that Jusuf Nurkic was out. And that's the thing for Portland right now. First of all, before we even deep dive Portland in any way, go pick up Drew Eubanks. Early this year, it seemed like he was still trying to kind of figure out how he fit with the starters. You might remember early in the season, Nurkic missed a couple of ball games and Eubanks was putting up 120 range type of numbers. He's much more confident now with the starters than he was then. Just something about feeling out the room. It's almost like D'Anthony Melton, actually. Kind of feel the room out a little bit. He's not going to assert himself, but defensively, he makes them better. Offensively, he makes them worse. But, this isn't a team that needs Nurkic on offense all that much as they need a guy who can actually defend a little bit and then get him out and run. So, not surprisingly, Dame had the game of his life here. Well, third 60-point game of his life, but this may be the best line that Dame has ever put up. 60 points, 7 boards, 8 assists, 3 steals, and 9 3-pointers. He did everything. It was amazing. But Drew Eubanks, 8 points, 10 boards, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 4 of 6 shooting. He's extraordinarily underrated. And you can understand why, because he looked awful in San Antonio earlier in his career. He looked good for Portland in garbage games in the silly season last year. And it seemed like that kind of helped him build a little confidence at the NBA level. We had multiple injuries in this game. Nurkic is one. He's listed as questionable right now on the card, but it's a calf thing, so I'm expecting he will miss a game or two. And I'd like to get Eubanks in my lineup for those because he's a big man who's not awful at the free throw line, rebounds well, and defends well. And then the other one, Josh Hart left early. Real shame. If someone gets hurt in a ball game, you want it to happen. Josh Hart and the injury. I know we had a little bit of a glitch there. I've been informed by some of our good pals here in the chat room. That's kind of where things pooped out for us. Josh Hart going down. He played 9 minutes. It's this thing like you just hope you really don't want anybody to get hurt, but if they do, you hope it happens towards the end of the ball game because then at least you get some numbers out of them first. Not the case here. Nas Little picked up the minutes. He's not going to do a whole lot with them. He's more of a defense first kind of dude. And, the one thing I thought with Portland that we might see was them moving Simons to the bench, letting him go full offense mode in against second units and just destroy other teams' second units. But now that a couple of guys are hurt, that's definitely not happening. Overarching theme here, I'm adding Eubanks. I'll play him for as long as Nurkic is out. And don't be surprised if Eubanks plays well, you might even see Portland continue to utilize him more. Like that may slide towards timeshare, which, sorry, Nurk, you got to defend a little bit. Toronto beat Sacramento. Kings just didn't look very good in this ball game. Keegan Murray continues to show nice, steady improvement. He's someone that needed to be added. We've talked about the whole rookie thing ad nauseum at this point. But in case you've missed it in the past, rookies stink for the first 2 months of the year, and then they slowly start to get better. That's why you buy low on them at that point. Stop drafting them. Toronto side, Chris Boucher, really good in this one. Minutes, I can't trust on a night-to-night basis. Precious Achiuwa, efficient again in this one. Can't trust the efficiency night-to-night. Those dudes make sense when Toronto has a good schedule coming up again. Obviously, that was the case last week with a 5-gamer, but not the case right now. Golden State, Steph Curry got ejected late in this ball game, but Jordan Poole came through after basically making the plays that irritated Steph so much, and Poole hit the game winner. This was a fun one, really good ball game. Brandon Clarke, 32 minutes as the starting center, 19 and 8. Only one defensive stat. Believe it or not, this could be better. I love it. Let's break down the Brandon Clarke, Xavier Tillman thing just a little bit here since we're getting towards the end of the card. I want to make sure everybody kind of knows my thoughts on why I was so pro Brandon Clarke and less pro Xavier Tillman. So this is the issue there. Clarke, well, for one, Tillman doesn't put up fantasy stats as quickly. He's a steals guy at center. Clarke is both. We know historically Brandon Clarke only needs about 23, 24 minutes to be fantasy relevant. As a starter, which I think he'll be in most games, and we can look up the Grizzlies schedule actually while we're talking about it. That might be a good little game to play. Figure out what types of teams are going to go against. So they've got the Timberwolves coming up next. I actually don't know what direction they're going to go with this one because Gobert is giant, but he's not a post presence. Then they got the Pacers, floor stretching Miles Turner. That feels like a perfectly reasonable time to go Brandon Clarke. The Blazers, if Nurk is back, you might see Tillman get the start there. If he's not, you probably see Clarke. Cavaliers, that's a game where you almost definitely see Xavier Tillman get the start because the Cavs are gigantic. Raptors, not that big. Bulls, pretty big. Wolves again. Celtics, Jazz, they're not very big. So you can kind of game out when you think Clarke is almost definitely going to be starting. I just think he's going to be doing enough overall anyway to where he's going to be a play. I like Brandon Clarke for a lot of reasons. Anyway, so I love Brandon Clarke. He's the guy that I picked up there on the Memphis side with Steven Adams out. I keep wondering if Dante DiVincenzo is going to be able to post value for the Warriors in 34 minutes, but it just doesn't seem like there's enough usage left for him. However, the efficiency run for Jordan Poole continues, so that's good news. And then the Lakers and the Spurs. We've got Jakob Poeltl back in shrink wrap again. That's how it's going to be between now and the trade deadline. He is very barely startable in all formats, playing 23, 24 minutes a night. I still think he's a possible buy in fantasy. And then Zach Collins, what's the upside there with Collins? Like 90 range if he slides into starters minutes. This was a better game than usual. Lakers still are somewhat undersized, but that might actually change as they alter their minute distribution in this ball game. So nothing really to do on the Spurs side. You're not picking up Keita Bates-Diop. There's unless you wanted to stash Collins, which we've talked about before on the show as kind of like a maybe sort of yes guy who feels like he's probably going to slot into an okay center role after the break. That's kind of the only note on the Spurs. For the Lakers, LeBron looked completely exhausted in this ball game, and it showed for quite a while. He was settling for jumpers. He was missing layups, which is super weird for him when he's not totally tired. But guess what? Look at this. LeBron, 11 assists. You think it's coincidence that he comes up with 11 assists on a day that Anthony Davis and Rui Hachimura join up for the Lakers? That ain't coincidence, friends. First of all, AD looked amazing. 21 and 12 with a steal and 4 blocks. He didn't really even have his power on offense yet, and he put up this type of line. All systems go there. Dennis Schroeder had 6 defensive stats. That'll be the most he ever has in a game in his career from now until the end of time. Patrick Beverley had a better shooting game, but those two guys are being, they're going to phase down. And Thomas Bryant, 21 minutes. It sounds like they're going to bring AD off the bench for the next couple of ball games. That's not enough for me to start Thomas Bryant. And then with Hachimura, I don't even want to talk about Russell Westbrook. He was so bad in this game, and he's been so horrible for 2 games in a row here. Hachimura looked like a fantastic fit for the Lakers. He's bigger than pretty much everybody on the team that's not a true center and not AD or LeBron. They just brought in size. They brought in a guy who has one-on-one ISO ability, but from a fantasy standpoint, like as fit goes, it's really, really good for the Lakers. Rui was a plus 17 in this game. That's the highest number on the team. I know those numbers can be a little bit deceptive, but if you watch the game live, it was not deception. He was a big reason why the team played well when he was on the floor. 6 rebounds in 21 minutes. That's key for this team that just gets crushed on the glass most nights. And they finally won a rebounding battle for once. Fantasy-wise, I don't know that he clears the bar in category leagues. I think he's someone you could look at because his value is going to be so tied up in scoring and rebounding that you're going to have all these bad categories. But if he's good enough in those two, he might just barely make the cut for like a 14-team points league or like a league that favors volume scoring. But otherwise, I don't think I would take the plunge. Just as a Lakers guy, someone who follows the Lakers pretty consistently, that was a really nice positive to see. Let's talk about what's coming up tonight. 6-game Thursday, which I love it when we actually have some games on Thursday. That makes me feel so much better. Although I kind of wish that we had one day, because we've had a lot of days in a row where there have been a decent number of games. I kind of need that one day where there's just like nothing happening. Detroit is in Brooklyn. I mean, this is a massive letdown game for the Nets off the Philly game yesterday. We'll probably see a couple guys get rested because it's, tank time. I don't think it'll be anybody critical, but you never know. And then with Detroit, nothing really. I mean, I love what I'm seeing out of Jalen Duren. This will be a pretty good test for him. Knicks are in Boston. Celtics are a relatively large team when they're fully healthy, so I wonder if the Knicks might not have a choice but to go the Sims-Hartenstein minute split at the center spot. When they play smaller teams, you're going to see Emmanuel quickly get up near 30 minutes, at least while Mitchell Robinson's out. I don't think that happens in this one. So if you're like trying to figure out whether or not you can use quickly in a roto league, I don't think I would. Head-to-head, I think I probably would, actually. He's been kind of just barely doing enough when the schedule's right. Chicago, Charlotte, with the Bulls, it's just this constant tug for me of is the Patrick Williams, Alex Caruso thing, is it enough? Generally, no. Again, those are guys that also make sense more on the head-to-head side. Because then if you use them on a bad game, it doesn't burn a game's cap. Charlotte, would I play Dennis Smith Jr. here? It'll probably come down to whether or not Gordon Hayward plays. LaMelo Ball's actually getting close too, so probably not. And that also probably means Jalen McDaniels, you might want to have a little hesitation on the Roto side. Cleveland, no Donovan Mitchell. I think he's questionable, but there's almost no chance he plays. I'm going to go ahead and just rule him out on the podcast. If I get that wrong, sorry. So you get the Karis LeVert points league bump. Nothing else of note there. Houston, do we see Kevin Porter Jr.? I don't think I've seen a report on him yet this morning. We'll do a quick check here to make sure that I'm not overlooking something. Let's see. Jimmy Butler just got ruled in, by the way, so that's useful. Rozier is in. Seth Curry's questionable. TJ Warren is likely to play. So we're getting a little bit of stuff on this upcoming card as I'm podcasting. So nothing really for Houston. Dallas, we saw Dwight Powell finally look good filling in. Could he do it again? And if so, is that even enough for me to make an ad? Probably not, actually. So kind of not really paying attention to anything with Dallas. Phoenix, nothing much. I mean, you can watch Cam Johnson's minutes, but he's been startable even in limited minutes lately. And it also means, well, DeAndre Ayton, is he playing is kind of a question mark, I guess, but I don't have the stones to start it back up there. Anyway, Spurs on the back-to-back against the Clippers. You'll probably see some of the veterans get rested. This might actually be a good game to roll Collins out there because I'm guessing Jakob Poeltl sits the back-to-back, but maybe not. You might see Keldon Johnson sit the back-to-back. You might see Josh Richardson sit the back-to-back. We'll know more by later on today. It might not matter because the ads with the Spurs have such gnarly fantasy games for 9-cat that you probably don't even take that plunge anyway. And then the Clippers. I think it's really just the two superstars and Zubats at this point, although if this game is a blowout, the way the line suggests it might be, then perhaps you get another big one from somebody like a Norman Powell on the Clippers side. So that's what's coming up tonight. And that is your Wednesday podcast. I'm going to say it one more time here at the end of the show. We are recruiting. Please do hit me up on Twitter at Dan Besbris if you want to be a fantasy analyst or if you want to cover a team in any of the 4 major sports. Doesn't just have to be NBA. We have a Braves show in baseball that's in an off season right now. I think I'm going to be starting a Dodgers show on the baseball side. We have a Seahawks show. Candace does a wonderful job with that. Obviously, most of our shows are basketball, but we are Sports Ethos now. We're not hoopball anymore, so we are pushing into the other sports. Hit me up on Twitter at Dan Besbris, or again, you can throw it in the YouTube chat room if you're watching live. roster@sportsethos.com is the email address. I'd love to hear from you. We want to keep expanding here at Sports Ethos. And the reason I'm kind of like planting my flag in this is that you've seen Vox with layoffs this week. You've seen Roto World with layoffs, whatever it was 2 months ago. You saw Fansided trim a bunch of stuff earlier this year. We want to go the other way. Sports Ethos wants to keep growing, and the faster we grow together, the better we can all do. So please do hit me up on that. If you've got the passion, this isn't an I'm going to screw around for a month type of thing. This is a, like, I want to cover whatever team as part of my life. Hit me. I'd love to hear from you. Again, it's at DANBESBRIS. To the recorded listeners, love you guys. You're wonderful. You've made this show what it is. Come join us live every day. As long as I've got my kids in school and they're not sick, I can go live most days. Tomorrow, our live show will be Brewski and myself. That will, of course, also go out on traditional podcast channels a little bit later in the day. I am Dan Besbris for Fantasy NBA today. Almost done with another week, everybody. Weekend review show coming up tomorrow with Brew. Have a great one. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Okay, YouTubers. Let's get to the preguntas here. Where are my preguntas at? I got to go all the way to the top. Wow, you guys have a lot of them today. You know what I'm going to do first? I'm going to remind everybody to click like and subscribe. We're at 32. We did get up and over 30 likes. Now I want you guys to get me to 35 likes and a couple more subscriptions. I actually can't track those on the fly. But what I'm going to do here is I want to send a tweet out that we're in our Q&A session. Live Q&A show going now with the mighty at Dan Besbris. That's right. I called myself that. So join the chat room. I know this is terrible YouTube, but you guys are going to have to bear with me because I don't have a producer. So I'm throwing it out as I go. That's going to go from Ethos Fantasy BK. And then I'll retweet it. And we'll make sure that everybody knows that it's happening. And that's good enough for me. All right. Let's switch this over to rankings. I want you guys to be able to see the rank board while we're going through this stuff. I don't know why I didn't do that in the past where I just clicked a new link. Where do we leave off? Von Eric Kloof. Should I drop Trey Murphy for Denny Avdia? Yes. Jason asks, will Nemhard ever return to relevance? Not this year, I don't think. Kalidas says, is Donovan out for long? I hope not, but it's a re-aggravation. So those they always want to be a little bit careful with. He wants to play because he's enjoying himself in Cleveland this year. So I'm going to say a week. Daniel Gafford or Drew Eubanks? Gafford. I think Porzingis is out. Well, it's a good question, actually. I don't know which of those guys is out longer. I'm going to go Gafford because we at least know Porzingis is out for a couple of weeks. We don't know what the deal with Nurk is. If we get a report, by the way, that Nurk is out for like 2 to 3 weeks, I might switch my answer to that question to Eubanks. And I probably go between these two guys, Gafford and Eubanks. I probably go with whichever one I think has the longer fill-in shelf. Do I think Zach Collins is a hold before the deadline? Should I drop him for Jalen Williams? The fact that Jalen Williams is a free agent in your league is mind-boggling. He should be rostered. Go switch it over to Jalen Williams. Is Gerald Williams a drop? I don't know who that is. Am I brain farting? Who's Gerald Williams? Baseball player in the late 90s. He passed away. Maybe this is Jalen. Are you talking about Jalen Williams? If it's Jalen Williams, the answer is no. He had a great ball game yesterday. Let's see what we got here. Trade Dame for Jonas. Oh, God, no. God, no. No. So, Fantasy Hoops noob. In a 10-teamer in particular, you always want the superstar. There's very few formats other than extremely deep leagues where you give away the superstar. The thing that a lot of people don't do and how they get fleeced on these types of trades is that they're like, oh, well, Jonas and Dinwiddie together, they put up better numbers than Dame. But it's got to be Dame plus the last guy on your team, right? Because if you do this trade, you have to drop somebody. So add Dame to that and then figure out which slide you like more. And it's almost always the superstar side. Better rest of season outlook, Darius Garland or OG Anunoby? Andrew asks. I'm going to go Garland by a hair. I think we've seen OG slide back a little towards, frankly, more where we kind of expected him to be. He's in the mid-20s now, but he's been playing more like a 30 to 40 range guy. I think that's basically where we've seen Garland settle lately as well. There's Garland at 48 overall on the year. They're real tight. So it's possible that with something like this, that could be kind of team needs based. If you need steals and stuff like that, you go OG. If you need guard stats, you go Garland. Do we like slow-mo as a rest of season play? Well, honestly, I have no idea when Cat's coming back, so I'm just going to say yes for now and then worry about it if Karl-Anthony Towns resurfaces at some point. Thanks, Jay. Andrew, with another question, was offered Jokic for my Anthony Davis. Yeah, I go Jokic there. I know he's been on like in and out with the hammy, but like AD turned an ankle in yesterday's game. He played through it, but it's always something with Anthony Davis. You take Jokic there. 12-team points league, head-to-head. What kind of player could I get if I give away Gafford and Derek White in a 2-for-1? Give me 2 or 3 names that make sense. Honestly, I don't think you're going to get much because those guys are hot streamers. White is about to lose a lot of his appeal because everybody's back besides Marcus Smart, so White slides back towards that top 100 range. Gafford might be like a top 75 play while Porzingis is out, but that's only supposed to be 2 weeks anyway. So, I mean, the best you could get would be to try to turn them into a longer-term streamer, I think, in like a slow-mo type deal. Or maybe you could get an injured Kelly Oubre or an injured Kelly Olynyk. Or maybe you could get Kyle Lowry because everybody's pretty soured on him. But that's probably about as good as it's going to get when you talk about these hot waiver wire type guys. Hey, everybody, while I'm doing this, throw your questions in, but also please do keep clicking like and thumbs up. That's part of how we continue to grow this thing. Should I trade, Oscar asks, Gary Trent Jr. and Michael Porter Jr.? And if so, who for? Well, I can't give you an exact name. It's a 10-teamer. If you put them together, you should be able to get a top 40, 50 range guy in your points league. Separately, Trent's been more like a 50 range guy, and then Michael Porter Jr., everybody's pretty low on right now. So of those two players, Trent is the one I would try to sell high on. And in category leagues, you try to sell high and see if you can get like a 50 range guy. And efficient league, I think that means like categories are super important, but you're not going to get much from Michael Porter Jr. right now. This is not the time. Dan, with Şengün's rise in production lately, do you think fantasy season his ADP is going to be in the second round? No, I think he'll probably go in the early fourth next year, is my guess. I mean, we don't know how the rest of this season's going to go, but that's my guess now. Should I offer Alperen Şengün for Julius Randle? I think I prefer Şengün, actually. I know, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit of a dick to Julius Randle. Julius is number 56. Şengün's been rolling a little better than that lately, and Randle's been kind of coming back a tad. It's not like an unfair trade in any way. I just think I'd rather have Şengün the rest of the way because the Rockets are starting to see what their offense looks like when it's run through him instead of the hyper inefficient guards. And they still don't care about winning. So, like, if he lets people go by on defense, it's not that big of a deal. He's trying, and they are more interesting as a team when he's the focal point on offense. So I think I'll stick with Şengün over Randle the rest of this year. Kyung asks, is Tyus Jones worth rostering in a 12-team Roto league, or any of these other players worth dropping for? Isaiah Jackson, Seth Curry, Zach Collins are the other names on there. Yeah, I mean, we know with Tyus Jones, his games tend to be when Ja is out for Roto. So, you know, there's a safety blanket there to say, well, if Ja misses 10 games the rest of the year, great, you get 10 stellar games out of Tyus Jones. Or do you drop him for a stash? In my mind, I think I drop him and I stash Zach Collins or Isaiah Jackson, not Seth Curry. Not interested in him. Collins, we feel like it's almost a guarantee that he slots into a starting role, but we don't know that he's going to hit that 90 range that we're kind of hoping. Isaiah Jackson feels less likely that he slides into a starting role, but if he gets there, he's the massive upside guy among this group. So I probably drop Tyus Jones for Isaiah Jackson. And then if Miles doesn't get moved, I flip back to either Collins or Jones after that. Delonte, do you think Tillman gets the start in some other games, or after that performance, they stick with Clarke? Yeah, I think Tillman's going to get a start when they go against gigantor front lines. And even in those, I actually think Clarke probably generally plays 20 some odd minutes. But that's why I really like Clarke as sort of the overall pickup there. Is Gordon Hayward worth a pickup in Roto? God, no. Kyung, I'm assuming you're watching for one of the first times. I am so down on Hayward. He has been awful this year, especially in Roto. Points leagues, okay, fine. Like, his awful efficiency is not killing you quite so much, but he's been so bad in Roto that, and I know a lot of analysts are like, well, he's still Gordon Hayward. He's not anymore. I got to move faster, guys. We're going real lightning speed now because I got to get through some stuff before my kid gets out of school. How worried are you about Jimmy Butler's back problem? Not that worried. I mean, he's just going to miss a game every other week, probably forever. And then you just hope that it's not worse than that. It sounds like he's probable tonight. So, yeah, I'm fine with Trae Young for Jimmy Butler. Jimmy, a way better per game producer. Trae will probably get you more games the rest of the way. If you have questions, throw them in there, man. I'm zooming now. Feel like Nurkic is trending down. When was the last time he played 30-plus minutes? I don't know that off the top of my head, but it wasn't that long ago. I think it might have been 2 games, actually. No, that was 27 minutes. He just had a big ball game in it. 30 minutes was January 12th. He just looks slow right now. He's the better fantasy player than Drew Eubanks, but Drew Eubanks lately has actually been the better reality play for the Blazers. This was when my internet crashed. So seeing a lot of messages about how that was not great for me. What is the rest of season ceiling for Aaron Gordon? When the team is healthy, he's outside the top 100, but they have a guy kind of rotating out seemingly all the time. So I would put Gordon, where's he now, actually? Because he had worked his way up into like the 60 range for a while. I think he's fallen back a good deal, and there he is at 111. Yeah, I mean, that's probably accurate. He's outside the top 100 when they're fully healthy. Better streaming option, Eubanks or Jabari Smith Jr.? Eubanks, sadly. Jabari's not good for Roto Games Cap. Any news for Cat? Nothing. Do you think McConnell will be relative after Halliburton returns? Relative. I'm going to say on this one. He won't be a 12-team start for Roto, but he will be startable in kind of your head-to-head schedule. He'll be a schedule streamer. Let's just call it at that. I traded Bol for Cat. Felt like there was no risk. Yeah, that's fine. Bol is pretty much worthless right now, and if Cat comes back, you get a monster. Would you trade Cat and Garland for Tyrese Halliburton? No IL slots. Woof. I would do this trade after Halliburton comes back, but I can't give up one injured guy and a healthy guy for a different injured guy. So this is like mostly yes is my answer to this one. Is Jabari Smith a drop in 14-team points leagues? I'm going to say no. I still have faith that he'll start to figure things out post All-Star break. PJ Washington or Jaden Ivey rest of season? It's PJ. Jaden's got those god-awful Roto issues, 9-cat issues. Now, if you're punting a bunch of stuff, it changes the answer to this, but I answer all my questions without a punt unless you specify otherwise, so it's PJ. Adam Drummer, hey, winner of an Ethos 360 package yesterday. Don't worry, Adam. I'll get that turned on probably this afternoon when I have a little bit of help around here. I've got a pending trade offer in my Roto League. My McCollum and Markelle Fultz for Desmond Bane. Yeah, go Bane in that one. Wayne, where do you see Wendell Carter Jr. finishing? Top 100, 90 to 100 range. He doesn't get defensive stats. Do you stream weekly? It's part of my strategy whole year because I feel like more number of games weekly is the best strat. Yes, I do. In weekly leagues, I absolutely stream. You want to look for guys that have a ton of games in a given week. And if you're just talking about a daily league, then yes, I definitely do as well. I like to long stream when I have a 4 weekly move thing. So I'm looking for guys that are playing 3 games in 4 nights. I can pick up a guy on a Monday and hold him through Thursday. So that way, 2 slots, like you're saying there, I do basically N over 2 is my number for streaming. If I have 4 ads in a week, 4 over 2 is how many slots I stream. And that goes up by 1 in the playoffs as well. Seth Curry not playing later. I think he's questionable right now. So we don't know quite yet. Marcus Smart's been dropped because of injury. Should I drop Lowry for him? 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Yeah, I guess. I mean, he's better than Lowry for points league, but I'd rather drop somebody who's less relevant. Like Lowry is a must-own guy in a 14-teamer, so you got to have somebody else. Who's got a better rest of season outlook, Ingram or Middleton? Middleton is typically the better per-game producer between those two guys, but it's just going to come down to who can stay upright, which unfortunately I don't have the answer to. And that is that. Sorry, guys, got to cut it off at an hour 9. Thank you, everybody. Click that like and subscribe before you leave this window. Before you close down the show, please like and subscribe on your way out. Just something to do as you're like. Scroll down a little on your mobile. Click the button. If you haven't subscribed, do that too. Much love. I'm going to go get the recorded show posted and try to make sure my kid isn't wondering, where's daddy at preschool. So long, everybody.